the Better Fantasy Football Show. I'm your host, Will Ty, joined today by Seth Woolcock from In Between Media. Seth, what's going on, my man?
Dude, Will, I am having a blast right now in this portion of the NFL calendar. All the puzzle pieces are coming together. NFL free agency, the NFL draft, and the schedule release all in the rear view. So now we can kind of put it all together and talk fantasy all day long.
I love it, man. So really quick, we're going to be talking about rookie running backs today. We're going to be doing a tiered ranking. But before we get into it, Seth, I would love to just sort of hear more about what you're doing at IBT, your experience in the fantasy industry, and tell the people where they can find you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Will, for the platform, man. Been a big fan of Better Fantasy, everything you guys are doing here on your YouTube channel, and, of course, the app as well. In Between Media, what we like to consider ourselves is a refreshing and feel-good style of fantasy sports and sports betting content. We cover fantasy football mostly, also some NASCAR and some PGA content as well. And, you know, winning championships, winning money is great, but what's the point if you're not having fun doing it? So that's what we offer over there at IBT Media. Got a great staff behind me and can't thank them enough for all their support from the ground up here.
I love it, man. And yeah, I was on the episode last night and had a ton of fun. Just great vibes. The guys are awesome. I love what you guys are doing. Really quick, this is at ad-lib because I forgot you guys did golf. Give me a pick for Oak Hill this week.
Okay, so I will admit I'm not the PGA expert, but I tail some of the best in the industry. Xander Schauffele, that's where they're taking me this week. That's where I'm going. So give me a little Schauffele this week. I think he's at plus 2,500 on a couple apps as well. So some good money there on Schauffele.
Good price. Should be a good event. All right. So I can't believe they're having it in Rochester in the spring, but that's neither here nor there.
I know.
So let's dive into it, dude. Okay, so we're going to do a ranked tier list for rookie running backs coming in. And just so y'all know, this is from the perspective of dynasty, right? So you're doing your rookie draft. I personally think it's really important to do tiered rankings when we're doing these rookie drafts. And if you guys remember, our episode with Steve Rippey over at Fantasy Guys, we did wide receiver, so it's going to be very similar to that. And the reason I think that tiered rankings are so important is because, like, look, just like with a real NFL draft, with our dynasty rookie drafts, we can trade up. Certain players fall to us. If we have a group of 5 players in the same tier, it doesn't make sense to trade up for the first player in that tier if you can get the 5th guy with your pick. So Seth, I think this is just such a smart way to do dynasty, like thought processing and so on and so forth. So I would love to learn more about your evaluation process for learning about these rookies, how you sort of come to the consensus that you're at now with your tiered rankings. What do you look for in rookies? How do you sort of go through your evaluation process?
Yeah, luckily I live in a great place for college football. I live right down the street from Beaver Stadium here in State College. So I do try to tune into as much college football as I can. Obviously, with the other sports we cover, sometimes it can get dicey, but I am very familiar with most of the rookies by the time they're even considering opting in for the NFL draft. At that point, then it's a film evaluation here. What do they do well? What do they do not so well on film? And then we actually have rookie profiles that we put out at IBT Media for all these rookies, and that's really digging in deep. What do these guys bring to the table to the NFL? What are they good at? What are they not good at? And how does that actually project for fantasy football? I love some of the advanced metrics. Scott and I over on the podcast, we dig into those consistently. So I'm going to have a little bit of that factored in. And then when it's all said and done, I know we love the talent, but also landing spot matters, man. Draft capital matters. We actually just put out a couple case studies on the website recently about how going on the different days of the draft can impact you having a wide receiver 2 or an RB2 season in your rookie season and in the first 3 seasons. And it's telling data, Will. So I kind of wrap that all in together. And hey, now you have the tiers, man.
I love it. All right, so let's get into it. Tier 1, who we got?
Yeah, so no surprise here. Tier 1, I do have 2 running backs in this. Bijan Robinson, obviously leading the way. And we've heard all the comps. The dude is a generational prospect. A lot of people compare him to Saquon Barkley. I see more of a LaDainian Tomlinson running style with him.
Not bad.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that gets lost with him is that his receiving skills are just insane, Will. Averaged over 13 yards per reception at his career at Texas, and just has a nose for the end zone. 35 rushing touchdowns. And why I think he's such a smash play in Dynasty, whether you're playing redraft this year, whatever format is, Atlanta Falcons, man, they want to pound the ball. Arthur Smith, he could be doing anything right now. Dude doesn't have to be coaching in the NFL. He could be, just having a cushy job with his family's prowess in the world, and he doesn't. And what does he want to do? He wants to run the ball. They did it on 55.3% of plays, second most in the NFL last season. And that was with a kind of, just some average guys, Tyler Algier, Caleb Huntley, Cordell Patterson as well. So I think now they have Bijan Robinson. They have a rookie, unproven quarterback. And I think they're going to see a lot of Bijan Robinson. You can at least scratch him in for 250 carries, maybe 300 carries as a rookie here.
Yeah, I mean, you know my thoughts on the Atlanta Falcons and their their potential for success this year. Interesting to hear though that you have both him and Gibbs in the same tier. So, are you kind of saying like, hey, if you have, obviously you're going to take Bijan over Gibbs, I presume, but you don't have Gibbs that far behind?
If I'm doing a dynasty, let's say rookie draft right now. There is a gap, but I still think these are both possible elite running backs, and these are guys who could be league winners in their first couple seasons, and that's why I kind of have them tiered together here. Right now, if we're doing a super flex rookie draft, I have Gibbs at that 105 spot. That's where I feel comfortable with him, or the 106, depends if you need a wide receiver with JSN. But I have them right there, and I'll be honest, like there are some red flags with Jahmyr Gibbs. There are no red flags that I can come up with Bijan. But Gibbs, I mean, comes in with over 900 receiving yards in his last two collegiate seasons, one of those being at Georgia Tech. And honestly, looking at the film, I like the Georgia Tech film a little bit better than Alabama. Georgia Tech obviously being in a weaker conference in the ACC. So, and I think the one thing we were all concerned coming into the combine was how much is this guy going to weigh? Well, he weighed in at 200 pounds. That is helpful. Ran a 4.36 40-yard dash as well. And let's be honest about this role he's walking into here, Will. This is a top 15 role when healthy. DeAndre Swift was pounding the table as an RB1 candidate for multiple seasons. He just couldn't stay healthy. Week number 1, Kansas City Chiefs come to town. They've allowed more PPR points to running backs than any other program last season. So I think it's going to be a hot start for Gibbs as long as he can stay healthy.
Yeah, I mean, look, like Swift not just pounding the table for an RB1, pounding the table for the RB1 earlier in the year. And so I personally think Gibbs is going to be a better player than Swift. Like, I think Swift might be a little bit overrated. Great player, but maybe a little bit overrated. And so I think Gibbs is obviously destined for a pretty significant role there. So I'm just so intrigued by the fact that you have both of these guys in your first tier. I don't think I've heard that yet. I love the new perspective.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely call it a 1A and a 1B tier, but I think they both belong in the conversation where, I mean, I'm in a couple startups right now, and these guys are flying off the board. Obviously, Bijan in a different aspect. He's a top 12 pick in most of these startups here, but Gibbs, I mean, if you want him, you're still taking him in the top 3 rounds. So that's where I put him here, and I'd be happy to have either one of these guys on my dynasty squad for years to come.
Same. Unfortunately, I'm not in a position to draft either of them this year. But okay, so that's tier 1, Bijan and Gibbs. Who do you have in tier 2, Seth?
Yeah, I have one running back in tier 2, and this is a guy who it took me a long time to come around to. I usually don't like players who transfer out of the Big Ten or the SEC and go to the Pac-12. I don't love Pac-12 prospects usually, but Zach Charbonnet, man, he has that all-purpose skill set, and he had the draft capital. That's really what it came down to me here. Round 2 running backs have had top 24 seasons in 62.1% of their rookie seasons. Wow. So there's a better chance he's going to hit right away than not. That was per Scott Rainier over there on our In Between Media website. And I think he's going to fit in here nicely with Kenneth Walker. I don't think either of them will be a workhorse. That's not what Pete Carroll wants to do. But even last season, Rashad Penny, DJ Dallas, Travis Homer, Tony Jones, they combined for over 119 carries in this Seattle offense. I think they want to run it possibly a little bit more this season, keep some of those pressures off of Geno Smith when they have to face the Nick Bosas of the world, some of those elite pass rushers that they're going to see in the NFC. And I think right now, when it comes down to Charbonnet, you're going to see a pretty decent carry share, probably about 120, 150 carries in year 1, and some nice receiving work. That's going to give him a really nice floor. I don't think he has an RB1 ceiling, maybe ever, as long as Kenneth Walker is healthy. But I think you can scratch him in immediately as an RB3 for fantasy with some RB2 upside as well.
Yeah, that's the big question with Zach, right? Is like how does he fit into this offense? What presumably he's the fifth weapon, right? Behind
Yes.
obviously Ken Walker and then the three wide receivers. So uh, he's in your second tier by himself. So the Ken Walker thing, I guess, doesn't scare you off that much. It scares you off a little bit. Am I correct in assuming that?
I mean, it did at first, honestly. But the more you think back to what Pete Carroll can do, and Zach Charbonnet kind of profiles, Bo McBrayer said it well on our podcast last week, as kind of a Chris Carson type of guy, a change of pace guy. He can pass catch really well. And I've always been on the train that I think Kenneth Walker is a better pass catcher than we've seen at Michigan State. They never really utilized his skill set there. And then last season we didn't see it as well. But I don't think that you go out and draft Zach Charbonnet in the second round if he's not your third down back, change of pace guy. So only thing you got to worry about is how many times is he going to find the end zone. And, I think that could be said for almost all these rookies at this point in the draft.
Yeah, and I think it's so important, too, to remember that there really aren't many bell cow backs in the NFL anymore. So I don't think it's I appreciate that the explanation there, because at first we're all freaking out. We're like, oh my God, they have Ken Walker. But if you think about it, most teams have a solid running back, but they still have that second guy that it's not even like he's the second guy. They're just doing different things for the team. And so if Charbonnet is the guy that's scoring the touchdowns, we'll certainly take it. Okay, so that was tier 2, right? Just Charbonnet by himself?
Yes.
All right, I love it. So tier 3.
Okay, so I will say I think my tier 3, it might be a little controversial. I might be going against consensus a little bit, but I'm not going to have to top here. It's Devin Ackney from Texas A&M for me. Very decent pass catcher, over 60 receptions at A&M for the Aggies last 2 seasons. He's a bit smaller for my liking. That's the one thing. We've seen it going back even 10 to 12 years ago. CJ Spiller was a guy he kind of reminded me of, the quick, elusive back. And while I maybe don't like that long term, I don't think he maybe has a long NFL career. He fits into the Mike McDaniel's zone run scheme perfectly. He has 99 percentile speed scores, which obviously fit in that high-flying Miami Dolphins offense as well. Death taxes and running back by committee, though. Like, that's the thing that you're going to get in a Mike McDaniel's offense. He has 2 of his boys, long-term boys, Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson Jr. there. But I think there is some upside here to Ackney. I think you just might have to wait a couple weeks to see it early in the season.
Yeah, I think that the interesting thing that I heard about him, given his prowess as a track star at A&M, I think that he essentially, like, he wasn't able to work out only for a running back role in his life as a physical athlete. Like, he had to work out as a sprinter also. And so that's going to change the way that you're able to sort of put weight on your body, obviously. And so we might even see him bulk up a little bit, which would be huge. Low key, Raheem Mostert's 31 years old, dude. Like, he's on his way out. Jeff Wilson, sure, like, system familiarity, great. Nothing special. So I love it as tier 3. I think he could even be in tier 2. I think he's going to be one of those guys that's going to be flying up rookie or redraft draft boards come like August, when all the blushy camp reports start coming out. Like, oh my God, this guy's so fast. He's amazing. So I love that you have him tier 3. Your first guy in tier 3. Who's your second guy here in this third tier, Seth?
Yeah, so I'm going to go against the grain here. It's Tyjae Spears from Tulane. And
I love it.
Before the draft, before the ACL reports that this guy might have no ACL, he might be a Hines Ward type of player, he was my RB3. I loved Tyjae Spears. Extremely patient runner. Great vision. The guy reminds me, he has a Le'Veon Bell skill set and vision, but he's in Elijah Mitchell's body. So obviously not the ceiling that I think Bell had, but dude is great yards after contact, top 5 in college football last season. Really nice hands, adequate pass blocker as well. And when the game was on the line, when the stars were shining the brightest, what did he come to do? He came to play. Tulane finished as a top 10 team, which I don't think any college football experts had, beating USC in the Cotton Bowl. That game he goes for 4 touchdowns, the game winner, 204 yards as well. So I really like Spears here. Obviously, he's going to have to sit behind Derrick Henry getting drafted to Tennessee for at least one more year. But there's a chance, Will, that we're sitting here, November when the trade deadline comes around, and maybe Henry's not even on the Titans. They're in full rebuild. I think Spears, I think Will Levis, I think Treylon Burks are going to be a big part of that rebuild. But I like Spears here. I'm not scared off by the ACL. However, he did not dispute the report that he has no ACL. He just simply said, I'm healthy.
Yeah, I love it. I just Tajay Spears seems like one of those guys that's going to be so easy to root for. If everybody has some time after listening to us here and after checking out IBT, go check out the Upper Hand Fantasy Podcast episode where Tajay appeared as a guest. He just seems like he's got his head on the right shoulders. And so it's hard to know for sure. Like I don't know the guy, but he seems like a good dude. And to your points, that like just jumps out on film. I love him as a prospect, and the Derrick Henry thing. He could be gone. He could be gone in August. We don't know if like some team comes knocking at the door. Maybe a camp injury happens or something like that. It's totally possible for Spears to be the RB1 this year. I love that you have him in your third. I love your third tier so far. I love these two guys. It's going to be hard for me to picture anybody else in this with just these two guys because I love them so much. But who else is in your third tier?
Yeah, so this is where I'm getting a little controversial. I'm going to go with my guy out of Illinois, Chase Brown. I watch a lot of Big Ten football, man.
Who? I don't even know who that
Brown.
is. No, I'm kidding.
Yes, sir.
That's crazy.
Sir. This guy is extremely shifty. He was a problem when he was featured in a bell cow role. I think he's someone who comes in and he could take on a 3-down skill set early on. Obviously, Joe Mixon's there. He has some concerns. But in this same role with the Cincinnati Bengals last year, Samaje Perine as the RB2 finishes a fantasy football running back 3 in PPR formats. This dude is yoked. Thick frame. I don't worry about him like having any type of injury concerns early on in his career. And again, when the lights were brightest for him, he put it on to display. Against Michigan, 29 carries, 140 yards, and 2 touchdowns for Chase Brown. That's the best defense he faced all year. To me, and I know this is crazy, but he is Christian McCaffrey. He has that skill set in Raheem Mostert's body. Like, I think he could really do some similar stuff to what CMC does. Obviously, I don't think he'll ever be a running back 1 for fantasy, but I think he has that 3-down skill set. Crushed it at the combine. So, yeah, I'm all in on Chase Brown. I have him almost every dynasty team I can get my hands on and a lot of best balls as well.
So let me ask you this, Seth. Where are you taking Chase in your rookie drafts?
Yeah, so this has been all over the place from where I'm seeing him in the rookie drafts. I've seen him as early as the middle to mid-second round, and I've also seen him in the third round. Mm-hmm. I would gladly scoop him up back into the second round. I think he's a guy. I mean, let's be patient a little bit here with him. Let's see what happens. But behind Joe Mixon on that roster, it's Chris Evans, Captain America. We don't really have a lot to go with. So I think Chase Brown, man, he's sneaky. And if you want to wait a little bit, especially in your startups, I think I got him in the 13th round of a startup this last week, and I was running around the house screaming. I was that excited. So Chase Brown, man, again, I don't want to say that this guy is Christian McCaffrey, but he has that skill set, same type of frame. And you look at their workloads in college, literally identical down to the amount of carries almost and the amount of receptions. So I really like Chase Brown. I think I'm on an island there, but I think he belongs in this third tier.
I love it, dude. So let me ask you one more quick question on Chase before we move on. If you're the Mixon guy in your league, and you have Joe Mixon, obviously last year was pretty hectic. This offseason has been nothing but disappointing for Mixon so far. How early would you take Chase Brown then to sort of be like that guy that slides into that Bengals RB1 role for you when Mixon presumably moves on or slows down? Are you going to, I know you said back end of the second, are you going to maybe look to him earlier in the second, potentially late first, or is that too crazy?
Late first, you're getting a little too crazy for me. I think there's a lot of solid wide receiver prospects, but like after those quarterbacks go off the board, after these running backs we've already talked about, like he's right there with Spears to me. I think Spears has a little bit more upside than Brown does, but I think Brown still, I mean, yeah, I wouldn't mind early, middle of the second. I can get him, push him up to about the 204, I think is where I've seen him go the earliest, and I was okay with that. So I know the draft capital isn't the best, and I think that's the one thing that holds me back from like pushing all my chips and going all in on this guy. But we don't see a lot of third-day running backs work, but we do see some, and I think Chase Brown's going to be one of them.
Awesome, man. Okay, so fourth guy in tier 3, who you got?
Okay, so we're actually going to go down to tier 4 now.
Okay, so there was only 3. Okay, my bad. Yes. So there was only 3 in tier 3. We had Devon A-Chain. Is it A-Chain or Acne? Because you said Acne.
I've heard it both ways. I'm terrible with some last names, so
All good.
You might be right with A-Chain. I think Acne's a little bit cooler of a name though. If I had to pick, which I could be totally wrong.
All right, well, we'll call him Acne from here on out until he retires. Okay, so you had him, Tajay Spears, and Chase Brown in tier 3. Okay, so we're starting tier 4 now. Who do you got?
Yes. Yeah, tier 4, there's going to be 3 running backs for me, and I'm a little bit lower than the consensus on Kendre Miller coming out of TCU.
Yeah.
I didn't love the tape as much as everybody else did. I like that he beat out Zach Evans, a former 5-star recruit there. But I love TCU's scheme, and I love the offensive line. It was an elite offensive line. I think that really helped this guy. He runs a bit upright for me, kind of lacks explosiveness and not a pass catcher either. But, opportunity's calling for him right now. We might see Alvin Kamara's suspension, but to me, he really profiles similar to Jamal Williams. So I don't see either of those guys as a pass catcher for the Saints. I'm kind of low on the Saints in general. I don't like their offensive coordinator. I don't like Dennis Allen as the head coach. I'm not a fan of Derek Carr as the quarterback, so I'm a little bit lower on Miller. But anytime you have an opportunity to maybe start as a rookie right out of the gate, if there is an Alvin Kamara suspension, you have to at least consider him. But he's a little bit too rich for my blood in some rookie drafts.
Gotcha. And just so we have an understanding, Seth, these tier 4 guys, where are you sort of thinking of them in terms of round in your dynasty rookie drafts?
Yeah, these are round 3 guys for me, especially in the super flex format. I've seen Miller go kind of all over the place. I've seen him get into the 3rd. I've seen him go middle the 2nd. That's too rich for my blood. But 3rd round for me, I'm comfortable with these players.
Okay, cool. So we start with Kendre Miller. Who's up next?
Yeah, it's going to be the converted quarterback out of Texas, Roschon Johnson, sat behind Bijan for a couple of seasons, 6 foot, 219 pounds, a little bigger than most running backs here. And I just think he's just an overall average player. He's patient in his running, solid in pass protection. He's a special teams contributor, so he's going to get on the field very early, I think.
Sorry, you got to say hi to my cat real quick.
Oh, absolutely. What's that guy's name?
This is Paris. Say hi, Perry.
What's up, Paris? Good to see you, buddy.
So we got all kinds of birds going on, so she's gonna float around here. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but
hey,
it's inevitable. So
all good, man. All good. To me, Roschon, he kind of reminds me his running style a little bit of James Conner because he's just so physical. So I do worry that maybe he doesn't have the longest career. Already kind of a little bit older of a running back prospect as well. But hey, he got 4th round draft capital, lands at the Bears. And I don't love Khalil Herbert, honestly. Like, I think Herbert's a little bit overrated. Not much of a passing game threat. Herbert isn't. Success rate, breakaway run rate, both worse than Donta Foreman last season. So it's going to be a little bit of a committee there. But I think by year 2 or year 3, Roschon could be the guy. But I just don't think he'll ever be a true workhorse anywhere. But, possibly an RB3 candidate as early as 2024.
Yeah, Roschon Johnson was one of those guys that I kind of had circled before the draft as somebody who was really interesting because, look, sitting behind Bijan, you're always going to be sort of an afterthought. But I thought he looked pretty damn good at Texas. It's going to be interesting to see how he sort of fits into the offense. Obviously, I am kind of a big Khalil Herbert guy. I think he's a pretty special player. But obviously, we know that Fields is a special runner, so it's going to be tough for him to see the field, but I do personally like him as a player and as a prospect. So interested in him for sure. The draft capital, like you said, we'll see, and the situation we'll see, but someone to have your eye on for sure. I think if you're in the 3rd round and you end up with Roschon Johnson, I think you're walking away from the draft saying, okay, I've got somebody pretty interesting. So those are the first 2 guys there in the 4th tier for you. Who else do you have here in the 4th tier?
Rounding out this tier again, I'm going a little bit away from consensus. This is one of my favorite prospects coming into the process, and I think he landed in a great organization for him, and that's Dwayne McBride out of UAB, man. Powerful bruiser. I mean, this guy moves the chain. Number 1 in this draft class in yards after contact. That means a lot to me, especially with the Minnesota Vikings line. It's a little bit hit or miss at times. And let's not forget, Will, they just changed the Twitter banner the other day. It is no longer Dalvin Cook in there. It is Alexander Mattison. So I think he could be the number 2 as early as this season. And Madison's not a guy who overly impresses me as well. And let's not forget Dwayne McBride. He's a player, the only group of 5 G5 player that was a semifinalist for the Maxwell and the Doak Walker Award this season. does absolutely nothing in the passing game. Like, he's not going to catch any passes at all. He's not going to be a Ramondre Stevenson bowling ball type, but he kind of reminds me of a LeGarrette Blount type out of New England and everywhere else Blount has been. So I like McBride here. I think he's going to be sneaky. You can get him probably for a late third round in rookie drafts, maybe even fourth round some places. And with everything going on with Dalvin Cook, like, I think there's a big hole to fill, and I think McBride could help fill it.
Dude's a bruiser, like you said. I think it's an awesome pick. This running back class is so interesting to me because it's pretty deep, and it's strong at the top too. Like, this is a really solid running back class. If you need a running back in your dynasty leagues, and you've got some picks this year, you definitely lucked out because any of these guys in the third round, Miller, Johnson, or McBride, I would personally be like, okay, like that's solid. It's nothing to scoff at. So I'm really pleased that you brought McBride into the fourth tier there. So now we're on to the fifth tier, Seth?
Correct. Yes.
All right, fifth and final tier. Lay it on me. Who do you got?
Yeah, so we got a bunch of running backs here. This is kind of where I threw the rest of them at. And we're going to start with Tank Bigsby. Mm-hmm. The guy is a tank. We know that. It's in his name. But he never really impressed me when he faced some of this bigger competition in college. I saw him face Penn State a couple years in a row and just wasn't that good. And obviously the offensive line, terrible in Auburn. Quarterback play terrible in Auburn the last couple years. I just think the comparisons are off for him. People are saying Nick Chubb. I don't think that's true at all. I think he's just an average running back here. Third round draft capital though, so obviously they liked him enough to take him on day 2, and there will be a role for him. JaMychal Hasty, James Robinson in this offense, 127 carries, 37 targets last season. So I don't think we're going to see much more. Last season, ETN 220 carries for him. Etienne's a smaller guy, and I was actually surprised he hit 220. I don't think he gets much more than that, maybe 230 carries for him. So I think we could see Bigsby have 100 to 150 carries here early on. I'm just not overly optimistic here. I think he is, there's so many great weapons in that Jacksonville offense. I think he kind of just fits into the fold okay here.
Yeah, I think they definitely it's a great fit for them, right? Like, because Etienne is that elusive pass-catching guy, super quick, super fun to watch, and then Tank Bigsby is the tank. So I think it's a really smart play. And if you need somebody like that who's going to have a defined role with limited upside, for your dynasty roster, depending on how it's constructed, I think he's a good play for that kind of team if that's what you need. So I love Tank. I'm in the tank for Tank. Who do you have as your second player in this fifth tier?
Yeah, I'm going with the little guy, Deuce Vaughn, man.
Okay.
Guy works for the Dallas Cowboys. They drafted him. He had to leave the room for that. That was kind of a cool moment.
Wasn't that awesome, man?
Oh, dude. I mean, could
so
you imagine
cool.
how happy you would be if you're his dad and your son gets drafted there? You had nothing to do with it as well. Mm-hmm. And this guy kind of reminds me of Doug Martin, like a little bit of a muscle hamster.
Wow.
And I don't think that Deuce Vaughn is going to be a generational player. I don't think he's going to knock our socks off. However, I think in that Dallas offense behind what's still a solid offensive line, they've done their best to kind of patch it with those aging veterans there. I think he's going to have a role right away, man. It's Rojo, it's Malik Davis behind Tony Pollard there. We know they don't want to give probably more than 15 rushing attempts to Tony Pollard per game. So I think like Vaughn might have a role right away where it's 7 to 10 carries per game. And where you're getting him in dynasty rookie drafts, a lot of times the late fourth, early fifth round, I'm sold on it. Kansas State was really solid for a portion of this last college football season, largely because of Vaughn and what he did behind that offensive line.
Yeah, I think that's a great point about what they've got going on in the backfield there in Dallas. Like, even when Tony Pollard was undeniable last year and even a little bit the year before that, they still gave it to Zeke. And I know people are saying, like, oh, that's because they gave him the contract and they felt obligated and blah, blah, and Jerry Jones and blah, blah, blah. But look, I think it's just a situation where Tony Pollard's a smaller guy, and they didn't want to overuse him. And so I think if that holds up and Vaughn is able to carve himself a nice role, like Rojo's probably not going to be too stiff of competition this year.
No.
So I think similar to Tank, we could be looking at somebody who is able to carve in a little role if you're desperate for a running back that you can plug in to maybe just get you a couple touches each week. I think Vaughn's an interesting guy. Again, limited ceiling, which you alluded to. So appreciate that you're kind of tempering expectations there, which you did not do with Chase Brown.
Yeah.
Or Tajay Spears. But But no, like, it's solid. I mean, like, look, we're in the 5th tier now, guys. So let's be realistic about what we're getting. But that said, they did land in solid roles for being able to produce at least somewhat for fantasy. Okay, so we got Tank, we got Vaughn. Who else do we have here in tier 5, Seth?
Yeah, I'm going with Israel Abanaconda. He's out of Pittsburgh, and dude is a weapon in the open field. But my big concern in the NFL is I don't know if he can get in the open field as much as he did at Pittsburgh in the ACC, playing against a little bit lighter of competition. He runs a limited route tree, limited in pass protection as well, so I don't see him getting on the field on 3rd down. And it was kind of sketchy. He dodged a lot of the competitions at the combine, didn't really work out much as well. And I think he was hiding that maybe he's not the fastest guy in the room like we thought he was. And he falls in line in a very competitive backfield as well. Obviously, Breece Hall is a tank. He's a top 3 dynasty running back for me moving forward still, despite the ACL tear. And Michael Carter and Bam Knight are there as well. Bam Knight showed a lot of spunk, man, after being undrafted last season. Michael Carter, say what you want about the guy, still has some decent pass protection chops as well there, coming out of North Carolina a couple seasons ago. So I don't really know where he falls in. I don't think he automatically becomes the RB1, even if Breece Hall is hurt for the beginning of the season. But you know, I like the story of Izzy Abanaconda, I think, more than I like the prospect himself. But the Jets seem to like him at least, which is a good thing.
Yeah, and look, that counts for more than what we can say about him. If the team likes him enough to take him that early, or at any point in the draft, really, that speaks volumes. So, the Michael Carter thing is interesting. I kind of like him as a player. I
was big on him when he was coming out. I loved him in 2021.
Yeah, and so we'll see. I'm not as confident as I am with this one as I was with Tank and Vaughn. Here in the 5th tier, but I'm interested to see who you have as your 4th player here in tier 5.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with Eric Gray. Guy's just a prototypical back, whether it's a Tennessee or Oklahoma. Guy was a very elite pass catcher, and he has an opportunity to spell Saquon Barkley right now. They're going to need him down the stretch, in my opinion. It's Matt Breida, who I think Matt Breida is kind of on his last breath in the NFL as well before he's playing in the USFL or XFL or somewhere like that. And the big thing propping him up into this 5th tier for me and a little bit higher than some of these other running backs is we do have a possible Saquon holdout coming. And I think it's going to get done. I think he's going to play on the tag. I think he's going to man up and do it. But until then, Eric Gray could be a guy to keep an eye on here. Regardless, I think he's a change of pace guy for New York, which I love Brian Daboll. I love what they're doing in New York. So overall, Eric Gray's fine. I think I'm a little bit lower than consensus on him, but I'll take him here in the 5th tier. I don't think I'll get him in many rookie drafts because he's going kind of in that middle of the 4th round, maybe a little bit earlier, sometimes a little too rich for my blood.
That's fair. I think when we're splitting hairs between tier 4 and tier 5, I'm not going to get upset with you. I do have Gray in my 4th tier personally. I think he's pretty akin to a guy like a Roshan Johnson in terms of potential opportunity, potential skill set. I do love, obviously, I'm a Giants fan, so I love the coaching staff. I love Daboll. I think he's going to be able to get the most out of. He got the most out of Richie James last year.
Yes, sir.
He's going to be able to do. He's going to be able to do something with this guy. So I like him. I think he's interesting. Let's kind of talk a little bit about sort of like where we are in the draft now for you, Seth. Like, are these guys that you're sort of looking at now in the 4th round, or where are we at for you?
These are late 4th. If you have a 5th round in your rookie draft, these are 5th round guys. If not, they're probably guys that you're putting in a fab request right after the draft for. That's, I think, where we are. I don't think anyone else deserves high draft capital at this point in the rookie season. Okay,
all good. Who else do we have here in tier 5, or is that it?
We got a couple more here. Evan Hall out of Northwestern, the armpit of the Big Ten for so many years. And, man, I'll put this in perspective. When they come to Penn State, that's the game that you get a little boozed up. You know what I mean? It's going to be a little bit of a slugfest. You're probably leaving late in the second quarter, early in the 3rd quarter. But, man, Evan Hall, he was one of the bright spots on that team. 55 receptions this past year. And there's a complimentary role open for the Colts who drafted him. Shane Steichen, he likes to use multiple backs. He did it in Philly last season. I think he does it again. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor is going to take the majority of those reps, 250 carries, lock in JT for that. But behind him, it's Zach Moss, who I think is nothing, and Deion Jackson, who I think showed a little bit of spark. But this is a new regime. They went out and got Evan Hall for a reason. And I mean, we saw it for a while. Complementary backs pair very nicely, whether it was Nyheim Hines or someone else, with Jonathan Taylor in this backfield. So I don't think he has much upside, but I think he could be an RB4 either this year or as early as 2024 as well.
Okay, yeah, and I mean, look, if you're sort of buying the hype on Anthony Richardson and you're saying, like, look, this guy is going to take the Colts between their new coaching staff, this is just going to be the next dominant offense in the NFL. Never a bad thing to have the second running back in that dominant offense. I think Hull could be like the Boston Scott of this team potentially, where he just dominates, like, instead of the Giants with the Eagles, it's like the Jaguars or something. So
yeah,
he's got that kind of potential. Okay, so that was your second to last guy, right, in this tier? Who's the last guy that we're going to talk about here?
Yeah, so last one that I will say I don't have Zach Evans in my tiers.
Interesting.
He was the chosen one coming out of here, but got beat out by Kendre Miller, got beat out by a talented freshman at Ole Miss this year, falls the 6th round. It is wide open there in Los Angeles in the backfield. It's Cam Akers, it's Kyron Williams. I just don't think Zach Evans is who us folks who've been playing Campus to Canton or any of these other Devy formats thought he was going to be. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with writing that off as an L. I'm going to go with undrafted free agent here. I really liked him coming into the draft, and he didn't get selected. And that's Sean Tucker out of Syracuse, man.
Oh, cool.
You watch this film, and it's not the most beautiful film. The guy has a lower pad level running style. Reminded me of a former Steeler who also wore the number 34, Rashard Mendenhall. Wow. Very stiff runner. And obviously I think some of those injury concerns and his running style hurt him in the draft. However, he lands in a very good place in Tampa Bay. And let's not forget, Will, the one advantage of a UDFA coming into the league is you get to pick where you want to land. And a lot of the time it's where can I make the roster at. And he saw an opportunity in Tampa Bay. Outside of Rachaad White, there's not much there. It's Chase Edmonds, who nobody wants a part of, whether it's in Miami, Denver. He's fodder at this point. Keyshawn Vaughn, if it was going to happen by now, it would have happened. And Patrick Laird, formerly the Dolphins. So I think Sean Tucker has a chance to stick around on this roster. Will he ever be an impact player in the league? I'm not so sure, but I think he's at least a spot on your taxi squad worth that.
I actually don't like Rachaad White that much, personally.
I've never been huge on White either. Like, I think the yards per carry kind of spoke for itself last season as well, under 4. Maybe Lenny ends up back there. I don't know, but I'm with you on that.
So what if Lenny ends up back there? Like, dude, that is such a great point that you made about UDFAs being able to choose their landing spot because they're thinking about where am I going to have the best chance to make the roster. Mm-hmm. I don't know Tucker as a guy. You know, he went to Syracuse, good school. If he studied journalism, then he's a really sharp guy.
Yes, sir.
So I think that was a smart move, and that might be something that we should really take into consideration here. So, okay, talking about Tucker as somebody that we're not really drafting, maybe in the 5th round if your leagues go there. Keep an eye on him though for your fab earlier on in the year, and if something happens in camp or something like that, then you place a bid on him. Is that kind of what we're thinking here?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, if you're going into the 5th round of a rookie draft, hopefully you know more than your league mates, because a lot of times, I mean, you're throwing darts at that point, you know, and I think Sean Tucker, he's a calculated dart. And so, if you don't get him in your rookie draft, if you only have 4 or 3 rounds, put in a little bit of a fab request. Don't go blow your whole budget, or just keep an eye on him in camp, in the rookie OTAs, and let's see how it pans out here for the guy at Syracuse.
I love it. Well, Seth, this has been awesome, man. Tell the people where they can find you and find IBT Media.
Yeah, absolutely. Will, thank you so much for the platform today, man. You can find me on Twitter at between_SethFF. You can find us here on YouTube at IBT_media. We have all the good vibes, all the good sports gambling and fantasy sports information for you, and also the website inbetweenmedia.com. A little something for everyone over there. Appreciate it, Will.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, thanks so much for coming on, Seth, and thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Really helps us out. Leave a comment. Tell us what you liked about the video. Tell us what you didn't like so we can keep improving. Until next time, I'm Will. This has been the Better Fantasy Football Show. We'll see you next time.